This exhibit presented in vivid color.
It's the Albacete Show, starring the mystical Monsignor Lorenzo Albacete. Tonight, we invite you to join Lorenzo and his guests, Bob Pollock, Helen Whitney, Sean O'Malley, Christopher West, Angelo Scola, and more. And now, here's Lorenzo.
Most fundamental fact is that I can give to you a date before which I did not exist. And rapidly approaching is a date which I think, after which perhaps I will not exist. So my first and fundamental question is, what's going on? You know, I think that's a valid question. I wish I didn't question it. I don't know, maybe every reality questions it. Maybe dogs and cats are consumed by this problem. You know, they don't seem to be.
They don't seem to be.
No, I watch a lot of the Discovery channels and the animal thing, and they have no evidence of wondering what the heck's going on. Okay.
But we don't know for sure.
No, I don't know anything, but I asked the question, and I don't see an answer anywhere. In fact, nothing seems to answer it. But the question won't go away. Then I notice that there are certain desires that are inconsistent. I should settle down for what I have. And yet, for example, I want people I love not to die. I want friendships that are not betrayed. I want justice. I don't want to be lied to. You know, there are desires that seem to make no sense, that appear, in fact, to be irrational.
And have questions.
So now he tells me that these are, you know, that accidentally I've evolved these things. Well, it's true that they don't, you know, these desires don't make me reproduce, but what do you know? Anyway. There is, I admit, a certain uselessness to this in terms of the fact that nothing in the world seems to correspond or answer these desires. Okay, my point, I think all that I ask of myself, and I think it's reasonable to ask of everybody else, is to be faithful to that experience, to that, and explore the implications of this. And if something is found that explains it, so that the question disappears, then fine, that's the end, and that's that.
Previously on the Albacete Show.
13,8 miliardi di anni fa avvenne il Big Bang, Dio creò la luce e migliaia di altre cose fantastiche come stelle giganti, pericolosissimi asteroidi, quark e gravitoni. E cosa siano questi ultimi due non lo so, ma sembrano cose fantastiche, no? Ma la cosa più importante per noi umani è che è stata creata la Terra, e dopo che le cose si sono un po' placate, Dio ha separato la Terra dalle acque, creando tutti gli spettacolari e bellissimi ambienti. Ma il più spettacolarmente bellissimo di tutti i luoghi è ovviamente l'isola di Porto Rico, che come tutti sanno si trova dove c'è il giardino dell'Eden. Dio popolò Porto Rico e tutti gli altri posti minori della Terra, con tutti i tipi di animali e piante stupende. Sto parlando di tonnellate e tonnellate di cose e, credetemi, molte delle cose che ha fatto erano davvero davvero strane. Poi si riposò, ma non per molto, perché poi nel 1941 arrivò sulla scena Lorenzo Albacete. Era così incredibilmente carino, il piccolo Lorenzo faceva un sacco di domande profonde, tipo: ma i pesci dormono? E sognano? E qual era il dolce preferito da Gesù? Quando per Lorenzo è arrivato il momento di andare al college, si è bilocato con un aereo a Washington DC e si è riempito la testa di domande, tipo: quanto fa I uguale mc3, x pi greco alla miliardesimo fratto b, meno radice quadrata di infinito e bla bla bla. E così Lorenzo si immaginava di passare il resto della sua vita a lanciare razzi nello spazio, a conquistare pianeti e a vincere un sacco di premi Nobel. Ma poi è successo qualcosa di totalmente e completamente inaspettato. E se vuoi scoprire cosa, non ti resta che sintonizzarti sul prossimo episodio di The Albacete Show.
Lorenzo Albacete defies any simple description. He reminds me of the Walt Whitman phrase, I am large, I contain multitudes.
He was full of joy, smiling, but in that presentation of his person, you will discover rapidly that this is an unusual human being.
As my priest, he in many ways allowed my heart to flow.
He was personal friends with John Paul II. The sense that you always had was that he was really not just teaching us from a book, from a philosophy that he'd learned or a theology he'd learned, but he was teaching out of an experience of friendship.
I read Lorenzo's book and I said, I got to meet this guy.
He was a total sign of contradiction. I remember him walking in with a cigarette in one hand and a piece of pizza in the other. And I just thought, oh, this is going to be quite a ride. And it was.
I think he took the time for everybody, this exquisite tenderness.
He had this unique ability to speak to the believers and the unbelievers and all shades of gray in between.
When I first met Lorenzo, I remember thinking he was the most exaggerated Puerto Rican I ever met. As a people, we process things in laughter, and he was a genius at that. We sing when we suffer, we dance when we suffer, we enjoy life, and he was like exaggerated in all of these aspects. We are super attentive to the weather because of the hurricanes. He was super paranoid about it. We are wanting to be our own individuals. He was just 100% himself all of the time. And so we take joy in being different.
Lorenzo, he had a profound love with his native country. He had a profound identity with Puerto Rico. And that he was a man who would have chosen probably to die in Puerto Rico, just simply out of love for his motherland.
His personality was so rooted in our history and who we are as a people. His passion for culture came from how deeply into his own culture he was. He appreciated who everyone else was because he could only be himself.
He was someone who will treasure the human person. And in his walk through life, he encountered another person.
I am from a native of Puerto Rico, and I grew up in a Latin American Catholic atmosphere. Faith was never questioned. We baptize anything that moves, and then have lots of celebrations and everything. I never found any conflict with my view of life and the proposals of the faith. I never experienced it until my beginning of my work as a scientist at a laboratory in the Washington area. Friends of mine that I absolutely admired and wanted, peers of my work, that I wanted them to accept me, to guide me even. I was a beginner in scientific research. And apparently I was not doing too badly when finally one of them, and I remember it as if it was yesterday, said to me, "How can you claim to be a Catholic, a Christian, a believer for that matter, and be a good scientist?" He said, who is the true you? You come in here during the weekend, and there's no difference between you and us. We accept you, you accept us, we're excited together, we follow the rules of scientific research today, and you're totally indistinguishable from any of us and a good addition to our group. I mean, I felt very grateful for that. But then you walk out of here, and on Sundays or whatever, suddenly you claim that a dead man stopped being dead. I mean, how can you, are you the same person? How can those two convictions coexist? If you don't let them mix, then you live two lives. Well, you know, the question in a sense hit home. I had never asked it of myself. I did not experience myself as living two lives. I thought it deserved an answer to them, but it deserved an answer to me, because now the question had surfaced inside of me.
When I was a young brother, a Capuchin brother, studying in the seminary, I began to work with the Hispanic immigrants in Washington, particularly at the Cathedral of St. Matthew's. And we had English classes there and a number of other activities. Lorenzo was sort of a parishioner at the cathedral. We had a lot of mutual friends, and we met then. That would have been in the late 60s, actually. So a long time ago. We became fast friends. At St. Matthew's, there was of course, always the challenge finding parking in downtown Washington. And so they had a small parking lot for the priest, and there was one place reserved for the cardinal. And Lorenzo parked there one night when he was going to some activity at the cathedral. And lo and behold, as soon as he parked the car, the cardinal's car pulled up right behind him, and the cardinal got out. And Cardinal Boyle was a wonderful man, but he was sort of a curmudgeon. So he went over to the window, taps on the window, and he says to Lorenzo, "Who are you?" And Lorenzo says, "I'm the cardinal." And Cardinal Well said, "I'm the cardinal." And Lorenzo says, "Yes, you're the daytime cardinal." He says, "But I'm the nighttime cardinal." And that was the beginning of a fast friendship with Cardinal Boyle, who put him into the seminary. He was at Theological College, which was right down the street from the monastery where I lived. So Lorenzo would often come at night, and we'd drink coffee late and solve all the problems of the world. And later on, when he was ordained, he asked me to preach at his first Mass, and it was such a joy to to see him ordained a priest and knowing all the talents that God had given him was now at the service of spreading the gospel and bringing the joy of the gospel to our church. Lorenzo liked to joke around a lot, and I fear sometimes Cardinal Hickey didn't understand that he didn't have the same. And very early on, when Hickey arrived, he announced that he was putting in a special phone for priests to call if they had any problems. Lorenzo, the first day, calls in and says, "Oh, Your Excellency, I'm having trouble finding my car keys. Would you be able to help me with this?" And the Archbishop said, "What is wrong with this man?" I said, "He's only joking."
«23 marzo 2001. Caro Don Giussani, quando ti ho visto l'ultima volta nel novembre dello scorso anno, ti ho detto che fin dall'inizio della mia vita come sacerdote cercavo il contesto ecclesiale che servisse come punto di partenza e di arrivo per la mia vocazione sacerdotale, anzi, per la mia vocazione umana, e che mi aiutasse a rispondere alle diverse esperienze che mi avevano portato a riconoscere la mia chiamata. Il mio vescovo di quel tempo, il cardinale William Baum, condivideva anche lui il mio desiderio di stare con altri che avessero la stessa convinzione circa ciò che mancava nel mondo in cui la Chiesa stava perseguendo la sua missione. E insieme abbiamo concepito alcuni progetti che sembravano in grado di andare in quella direzione. Tuttavia, nessuno di questi progetti aveva generato alcun frutto.
His style, his way of approaching things always spoke of his relationship with someone he knew. He knew that this mystery was revealed in Jesus Christ, but it was still a mystery. One time I was in the rectory with him and, he was looking for something to go to a meeting. I was supposed to drive him to the meeting. He couldn't find what he was looking for. And this is in his room, and of course his room was completely disheveled and, not very well organized. And so I was like, oh my God, how are we going to find this? And so I said, just kind of off the cuff, it was kind of a personal thing, I was like, oh, let's ask St. Anthony. And he said, so Lorenzo at that point goes nuts. I mean, it was like, don't mention his name. I was like, well, who did I say? He said, he did not. He's looking up, he said, he did not talk to you. He did not mention you. He looks to me and he says, St. Anthony hates me. We will never find this now. And it just struck me that I had never, it was kind of like a common pious thing that you would say, let's ask St. Anthony. But to him, these were real relationships, and they were relationships that kind of spun in different directions at different times. This one who knows Jesus Christ in his own way and in a personal way can also help you to do that. And so it was a unique, for me anyway, a unique and very personal and very intimate way to understand how the saints engage. We never found the document, by the way, so it was.
When he came to Washington to give his talk at Catholic U and visit people here, he stayed at the house of Cardinal Baum, my boss. And the Cardinal asked me, since he knew Cardinal Wojtyła was a scholar and intellectual and interested in these things, he asked me to be around and for conversation purposes, etc. And that's what I did. He was dressed in a black cassock, and there was no great claim to fame. But before one would even talk about his ideas, I was aware of a great, that you were in the presence of a man with almost capital M. There is in him a great authority, but in the good sense of the word, not a frightening one, a great weight of presence and intensity of you know that this man has a very intense inner life. We talked extensively about all kinds of, first of all, I asked him what he was studying and what he was going to talk about, and that led to all kinds of mutual interest in philosophy and theology. And we had departed with the understanding that I would write, that I would continue the dialogue we had here, that I would become more familiar with some of sources he had given me, and I never did. I never wrote again. You know, I went in and said, Holy Father, well, what can I say? And he said, well, I'll bet you'll write now.
You're watching The Albacete Show.
What made the most impression on me was his person. He was a man who was free. And I was 25, 26 at the time. I was bound up by so many fears, by so many hang-ups. And there's this man who had some encounter with a love that he just called the mystery, that had truly changed his life and liberated him. And I said, whatever that man has, I need it.
He was such a presence in the classroom. He never just taught. He always brought himself, and a very profound, personal, lived experience that was always coming through everything that he taught. So that was that was more moving, I think, than a lot of lectures.
I remember one moment in the classroom where, on one drag of his cigarette, as if he again was inhaling almost the whole thing, he had begun by saying, "The scandal of the hick. The scandal of the hick." And I thought, what is he talking about? The scandal of the hick. And of course, anybody who knows Albacete's teaching, he was about to give us a profound meditation on the mystery of the incarnation, and the fact that at the Basilica of the Annunciation, which I just visited 9 months ago in the Holy Land, is a plaque on an altar that has the familiar, the Word was made flesh, except here we have the word hic. The Word was made flesh here. And what began humorously with the inhale of the cigarette and this curiosity about the scandal of the hic became, as I said, a profound meditation on the mystery of the incarnation, which utterly captivated and fascinated this man, and in turn, anyone in that classroom who was paying attention and willing to go on the journey that Albacete wanted to take us on. He had us enthralled. And I have been reflecting on that scene, the cigarette, the scandal of the hick, and how he set the whole thing up. I have been reflecting on that scene in the classroom for 25 years.
He would say something that would rock your world, but then you'd be thinking, I want to know more. What is this all about? And of course, the way his very personal presence just drew you in. You'd be very riveted by everything he said. And so I just, that every encounter I had with him was like that. I would say, like, every personal encounter had that quality to it, of just being, like I said, scandalized or shocked or rocked, but also attracted, drawn, magnetized, by his presence. So that was consistent through the whole time I was a student.
In Albacete's mind, there was no difference. Well, let me say it this way. There was a distinction between the sacred and the secular, but not a division. They were wed for him. And again, that flows right out of his lifelong ponderings and entering into and living out the reality of the incarnation.
So it was that proposal and just that Monsignor was always proposing things like that. He's always just bringing forward the absolute truth of the situation, the reality of the situation. And, as students, we couldn't retreat into our own version of what Catholicism was. It was more a question of really coming face to face with the reality. And so that was a huge, I would say it was such a huge experience that I can distinctly remember sitting in his classroom. I can remember where I was sitting, right next to the window, second row on the left side, and being so struck by the manner of his teaching that I said to myself, I know now why I came here to study. It was so I could be in this class right now, listening to this man. It was very dramatic for me at the time.
And now a word from the mystical Monsignor.
Today's word is
mystery.
Can you tell us in your native speech why they call you the mystical Monsignor?
Me llaman el Monsignor místico porque a mí siempre me ha interesado, me ha fascinado el concepto del misterio.
¿Por qué?
Porque hay algo detrás de las apariencias. Yo quiero saber, algo me llama.
¿Dónde
¿Qué
es
hay
el
detrás?
misterio?
Precisamente ese es el problema, que lo busco y no puedo localizarlo en una manera definitiva. Lo puedo empezar, está aquí, esto contiene el secreto, pero obviamente no, va a ir más allá, más allá. Esa búsqueda me inquieta.
It was about 6 p.m. because I remember this because it was right after dinner. I didn't have any appointments yet because I was still newly ordained, so you had a little free time. And I started clicking on his name, and article after article, and then YouTube after YouTube. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning when I got to bed after I was binging on Albacete. And I remember deep in my heart just saying, finally. Like, I finally found someone who could say things that I was feeling and intuiting, but I was certainly never going to be smart enough to articulate the things the way he was, but I at least knew what he was saying is what my hesitation had always been in my theological studies. And so I just knew right away, I somehow have to stay close to him, and oh crap, what am I going to do now? The guy's dead.
Lorenzo's here in the presence of Benedict XVI, the most exquisite of pontiffs in every way of being. And here was Lorenzo there with the Holy Father. Half of his face was shaven. You know, his coat was covered with whatever he had eaten that morning and 3 weeks before. And he was completely at ease. I mean, that's our Catholic faith. And this is who Lorenzo was. This is who Lorenzo was. You know, that Jesus is not afraid of any of that stuff. And Lorenzo wasn't afraid of any of it either. And I think in loving Lorenzo and being in friendship with Lorenzo, it should teach us not to be afraid of those things either.
Every single one of us entering into these retreats because of Lorenzo, because it had something to say to us about our lives, you know, and not, they were, of course, they were hilarious and fun and beautiful, these retreats, but to see him in his, not only him thinking through everything and praying about it and laying out everything in front of you, but how much he loved these priests. He loved being with us, sitting outside smoking and just hanging out forever, you know, as just to talk, just to hang out and talk to these guys.
This was a man who I believe was so in touch with his own humanity, and like every humanity, you know, broken, wounded, problematic, and everything like that, that he was able to attend to other people in their moments of brokenness, of woundedness, of suffering. He really did have that exquisite tenderness. I saw it offered to me.
That's always the hiding, is somehow my humanity is going to get in the way. And he was given some grace at some point where he just knew from the top of his head to the bottom of his toes that my humanity ain't an obstacle to anything, because if God became flesh, then this is how it's going to get to you. Sorry. And that was it. And then, and by doing that, he gave you permission to say, well, crap, if that's the way Lorenzo is, I'm not Lorenzo, I'm Ryan, but I guess I got to be Ryan then. If that's how God's going to come into the world, I guess I got to figure that out then. I have to wrestle with the fact that I am part of the equation of God entering the world. And Lorenzo was fine with that. He didn't need to have the answer. He just was okay with, well, it's coming through me somehow. And I found that to be really a blessing.
Everything about him was, can you stay with me? Can you be with me? And you wanted to be there. And when you did, you, like Father Ryan was just saying, you then begin to see things in a more beautiful way. And that's why we miss him so much.
Per i successivi 10 anni l'istituto crebbe molto dalle sue umili origini, fino a diventare oggi una delle facoltà teologiche più prestigiose degli Stati Uniti. Angelo Scola veniva spesso da Roma per insegnare all'istituto e siamo diventati amici intimi. Prima di incontrare Angelo, cercavo una sintesi teologica che riunisse i diversi ambiti dell'esperienza che muoveva la mia vita e la mia vocazione. E ho creduto che l'istituto fosse un luogo privilegiato per formularla. Ora, sapevo che non era abbastanza, ci doveva essere qualcosa di più della formulazione di un'adeguata visione teologica. Angelo ha riconosciuto ciò di cui avevo bisogno e ha organizzato il mio primo incontro con te a Milano.
Per me è stata una amicizia molto, molto grande. Dopo cena andavamo abbastanza di frequente in una delle chiese di Washington, cui c'era l'adorazione perpetua, per pregare un po', ognuno per conto proprio. Io andavo un po' forzato, ma lui ci teneva molto, insomma, trovava sempre il modo per trascinarmi.
He was different. There was something about him that I had never seen in a priest. Being interested in and embracing everything that was good, interesting, and to do so freely. So I asked him, I said, how come you are like that? And how come you think like that? And he said, well, you see, I was educated by this Monsignor Luigi Giussani. And who's he? And then he gave me his name, told me the story, movement, etc. But then that was a foreign and strange thing to me. But fine, that was that. Every time that he acted this way, I asked him the same question, and always the same damn Giussani kept coming up.
Fin dall'inizio, prima che lui mi dicesse appunto quella volta lì, perché citi sempre Don Giussani, perché dici questo, perché dici quello, io anche un po' stufo gli disse, ma tu a parlare con Don Giussani.
Only that Scola wasn't there, he had framed us, he had set us up.
He put the two of us together, and he never intended to be there. So Giussani was thinking, what the heck is this guy here for? And I was thinking, what do I say to him? You know, hi, I like your books. Will you autograph this?
E quindi ho creduto che l'incontro diretto fosse realmente importante per lui e magari avevo anche pensato per il movimento negli Stati Uniti.
And at the end of this long conversation, he had asked me for help for the movement in the United States, and I agreed. And so when I got back to the United States, I began to be more involved in certain of the activities of the movement. Never did I think myself part of it. Through being with these people and living life with them and doing these gestures with them, that theological synthesis I had worked together had become a life, something concrete, a real life, an experience of life, and not just a thought.
Raramente un intellettuale si sposta fino lì, a un'età relativamente matura, avanzata della sua vita. Quindi, secondo me, è proprio il concetto di esperienza, o meglio, il metodo del partire dall'esperienza.
At the end of tonight's episode, we will reveal the contents of this never-before-seen secret mystery tape, in which Lorenzo Albacete reveals the answer to a question that has remained unanswered for more than 60 million years. Stay tuned to The Albacete Show.
Seppi che si era liberata il rettorato di Porto Rico e allora dissi a Givic e al Papa che Albacete poteva andare bene, rischiando molto, sapevo di rischiare, solo che avevano già scelto il nuovo rettore, ma nonostante questo il Papa all'ultimo momento cambiò, disse via questo qui e vada Albacete.
The conversations were just terrific. You know, here, this small university, the goals, the sensibility of making it kind of the meeting place of both North and South America and the studies that were going on. It was great expectations. I mean, it was just great fun.
He would have been a wonderful president, except that the bishops in the island, they got nervous. Because it was so creative and so different, that they just didn't know how to take him.
How could they miss what was being given to them? How could they not see the potential for what was possible?
E lì lui entrò con la sua personalità, con tutti i vescovi contro per questa operazione, con disordine nell'amministrazione finanziaria. Insomma, gliene fecero di tutti i colori e lui dopo un anno...
We call him Lorenzo the Brief, because he only lasted 9 months, his presidency.
For the last 9 years, I was the president of the Board of Trustees of the Pontifical Catholic University in Ponce. That was from the year 2011 until last August last year. And I was able to understand and realized that the reason Lorenzo was ousted out of the university by the Board of Trustees, but by the Grand Chancellor, the Bishop of Ponce, and other bishops in Puerto Rico, was because he started to find difficulties with the way the business of the university was being conducted. I have asked the university to research the tenure of Lorenzo at the University of Ponce, but one thing I'm pretty sure of, and I'm convinced of before the Lord, Lorenzo did what had to be done. The church in Ponce, involved with the university, was so embroiled in difficulties that they didn't want Lorenzo to resolve them. Lorenzo was so generous, so noble in his soul, the nobility of Lorenzo to resign gently without giving any scandal. To me, it was an incredible example of Christian love, of the capacity to live with others in the church.
I've described him as this brilliant missionary to the secular world. It's no small thing to be able to do that, to be that in the midst of modernity.
So we had the same, not the same language so much as the same presumption of the necessity of being clear about what we don't know. And that's what brought us together in a very serious, ongoing way, so that I am still talking to Lorenzo in my head sometimes.
He always said to me, you know, Helen, I get up and have to fight every morning about what it is that I believe. Validation never completely ends, even for a Monsignor. But I guess what I'm saying is that soulful, hard to describe question of what is of ultimate value in your life was one that came up with Lorenzo in ways that it rarely does with other very close friends. And so, as I was saying, friendship with Lorenzo, there was so much food on the plate, so many different meals, and he seemed, and I with him, to touch all those bases.
That is Lorenzo's legacy. It is the absolute transferable, non-judgmental, available possibility of the love that Amy and I felt in your house, the love that I felt hanging out with Lorenzo. It is safe love. And that's his legacy to me.
It was also funny.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, I'm a seeker. I haven't found my faith, but he always gave me hope that I one day would. And as I said, he helped me doubt my doubt. And I think he did that for so many people.
Why? For his sake is the core of freedom.
Because of who he is, because we were created for his sake. It's the core of freedom because Christ is the definition of what God had in mind when he meant human, when he thought of the human reality, when he thought of the universe. It was Christ. Christ is the only one who can make this claim and this demand, this total demand, because he is who he is. No one else can make this claim. No one. Please. So this is, for his sake, is absolutely true, this statement, but it's also extremely dangerous, because it's very easily to be deceived that you are doing this for Jesus. In the name of his sake, people have been killed and deprived of freedom and massacred. In the name of this, I am following Jesus.
I'm sorry, but why? For his sake?
Because it is not the one that has come to us in the flesh, in the life and tradition and truth that I have encountered through the following of the 2,000-year tradition and life of the church become real to me among other people who have loved me, who know me, because of that fleshliness.
Tutta la mia storia di costruzione del movimento in America è il nesso totale, completo e assoluto e diciamo di figliolanza nei confronti di Lorenzo, sia sul piano del pensiero che sul piano della guida che sul piano dell'amicizia personale. Rimane uno dei più grandi amici che ho avuto nella vita, ma dentro questo tipo di dialogo.
But why, for his sake, said by another guy, for example, people who destroyed the Twin Towers, is a violence? Which is the difference between this position? Because they are saying that in their religion they are fundamentalists. They say, for his sake, we do everything. And usually people say, you mustn't say, for his sake, for being democratic, open, and so on. Why in this case is to be free, and in the other case not?
Because this is a decision, a judgment I make within a 2,000-year-old history of flesh and experience and life. It's not something that is a response to an enthusiastic response to the ravings of an attractive leader who gets me all excited to go out and do this for his sake, die for Jesus. It is something that has come to me through normal human channels. I mean, it is here where the role of the Blessed Virgin is crucial, because it is the assurance that this is being tied down to a human reality, that you're not being asked to go following some exotic ideal.
In che cosa incontra Don Giussani incontrando Albacete? Incontra una persona cattolica, di provenienza ispanica ma cattolica profondamente americana, che dimostra dal vivo come persona che il concetto di esperienza è cattolico. La profezia di Giussani dell'esperienza come modernità è in Albacete vissuta in una personalità cattolica americana. Quindi vede l'incarnazione della sua intuizione di sempre, dei suoi studi, della percezione dell'America, perché la forza di Albacete è di essere profondamente americano, profondamente radicato sull'idea dell'io, di un'appartenenza alla Chiesa non basata solo su morale, dogma e gerarchia, che pur aveva, ma che era una conseguenza dell'esperienza dell'io, un'esperienza dell'io che torna ad essere cattolica, che è la radice del cattolicesimo, che non è protestantesimo. Quindi incontrando Albacete, Giussani incontra l'incarnazione di un punto centrale del suo pensiero, un americano che vive questo radicamento in tutto il percorso della corrispondenza, e lo vive e lo sviluppa nel corso di tutta la sua attività in nesso con la cultura laica, ragionando con la cultura laica, penetrando con la cultura laica, scrivendolo sul New York Times, sul New Yorker, e quindi mostrando un volto assolutamente nuovo del cattolicesimo americano, che purtroppo in gran parte sente quest'idea di esperienza, sente quest'idea di soggetto come qualcosa di estraneo e come qualcosa di protestante. Quindi questa è la forza che ha, come dire, nel pensiero stesso di Giussani, perché capite che un conto è intuire, un conto è vedere che qualcuno lo vive, e lo vive all'interno dell'America.
I mean, look, yourself is all you have. You don't have many chances. You are going to put all your entire self on someone. You better make sure, that's worthwhile, that it is worth yourself. How could you ever make that judgment and be confident unless it is not in response to having been totally loved for yourself first. You understand?
Prima, molto prima di quello che ci si sta accorgendo adesso, lui disse, qui mi ricollego a quello che dicevo all'inizio della nazione americana, la nazione americana ha bisogno di un vero cattolicesimo, perché il cattolicesimo che rende presenza e possibilità di convivenza, la libertà e l'esperienza di una corrispondenza è l'unico modo con cui non tradisci la Costituzione.
Tornando a New York da un viaggio, abbiamo sorvolato la città e tutto quello a cui riuscivo a pensare era che laggiù c'era la mia famiglia e che tu sei nostro padre e che il movimento è davvero la risposta alla mia ricerca di tutta la vita. Finalmente ero tornato a casa.
Before encountering Albacete, Giussani was speaking about US, about American mission, but Albacete was the incarnation of this possibility. And I think that what Albacete suggested is not the past, it's the future.
We didn't know exactly what was happening and what was going to happen. But as the adventure went by, I saw that, how can I put it? That was becoming Lorenzo's flesh. I mean, in giving himself and in sharing his love for Father Giussani, he received the 100-fold.
You need a culture able to take inside everyone. Lorenzo is this position, also because he went from Puerto Rico, he was a scientist, he was a priest. He's an example in his life of this possible connection between different parts of American people.
It seemed that he had been taken a little bit too early. And so in order to make sure that future generations had the opportunity to experience the same person that we had, we decided to form a way in which that could be done. And so the Albacete Forum was created out of that desire to continue sharing Monsignor's legacy with the world. Collecting everything that we had of him, from hand-scribbled notes on napkins that were written on his way to important speeches, notes, email correspondence, talks he had given, little bits that had been recorded here and there, to the pens that he bought all over the country and the world and collected by, quite frankly, the thousands. And to form an archive, first and foremost, and then to use that archive in a way that would continue to offer Monsignor Albacete's thoughts and what hadn't ever been published by him with people who had not yet encountered him, or for those people who had encountered him, as a way to go even deeper into knowledge of him. And this became a work, and we wanted to share this both in public forums and with the publication of books.
When it was the moment to leave, Albacete greeted him, kind of embracing him, and then he left. So then it was my turn to greet Father Giussani, and I went there to embrace him. And Father Giussani said, looking at Monsignor, who was just leaving, he said, I say it in Italian first, dobbiamo dare tutto per quest'uomo. we have to give everything for this man.
It's been a great honor and pleasure for me to be working on a collection of Lorenzo Albacete's writings called The Relevance of the Stars, published by Slant Books, the literary imprint that I edit. And it's a book that I think has been one that many people have been longing to see. People have understood that he was a real thinker. And this collection brings together a wide range of his most thoughtful pieces that are both grounded in deep theological ideas, but also with his classic ability to communicate with humor, with concreteness, and with a certain level of mischief and fun.
After Monsignor died, there was a ton of material that he created in all different formats, a lot of it not in digital format, that we collected and we've put together in an online archive. The Relevance of the Stars is really the fruit of going through the archive, taking some of these gems, putting them together in a single volume.
One of the things that I really love about The Relevance of the Stars is the way that it synthesizes the thought of Luigi Giussani, the founder of Community Liberation, and Popes John Paul II and Benedict XVI. And then the second half of the book really applies these insights to a variety of issues: how Christians engage culture, how the professions can be pursued in ways that follow the common good. And so there are essays on law and medicine, university teaching, youth. There's a tremendous breadth there, but there's a unifying vision at the heart of it that really ties everything together in a powerful way.
The stars represent the desire for the infinite of the human heart. And the proposal that Monsignor makes is that it's only by living for those infinite desires that we're ever going to get anywhere in life, right? So we have to get to the bottom of that.
Our desire, our hunger for truth and for beauty and for goodness and justice really do shape everything that we see, the whole world. And that goes right down to the things that we're tempted to think of as mundane, but how we live, how we eat, how we hang out with each other. And Albacete gives that an intellectual grounding that's very, very accessible and readable.
How do we live according to those desires in a society which is, on the face of it, entirely divided, right? That's what we've experienced this year, is this huge division in our culture between different camps, ideologies, different approaches, different parties. And I think that what Monsignor Albacete does in this book is he gives us a starting point for understanding the division and getting to and healing it, getting to the bottom of how we could heal that.
And now, we reveal the never-before-seen contents of this secret mystery tape, in which Lorenzo Albacete reveals the answer to a question that has remained unanswered for more than 60 million years.
Why did God create dinosaurs?
Well, I have that answer.
You know why?
Probably.
I tell you why God created dinosaurs. Because he enjoys them. Because there was a Noah in his mind from all eternity. From all eternity, he has known this truth. And he created dinosaurs because he loves them. Why is that? Because God is absolute love. And when you think about how you act when you're in love, completely insane. You do absolutely useless and crazy things. Things that are in fact somewhat embarrassing. That you are not in love, you know? You say, how could I ever have done anything so silly? And you do crazy stuff like that. But that's you. Imagine absolute infinite love. You know? I have a friend of mine who's a priest, the Archbishop now, and we were a few years ago on this, back home in Puerto Rico, and in the south coast there are these little mangroves. These are little islands that they don't have sand. They have like the roots of the tree are in the ground. I mean, but they are hundreds of trees with the mixed roots. They kind of like just float in the ocean. And you go through little channels, you take a little boat and go through channels of tons of these. It looks like, you're in Miami Vice or something. And it's just and you go through them, and, we took her for a ride. And you see the weirdest little silly, stupid animals, like crabs this big, little crabs, little fishes that jump, and you see them. No human being has ever seen those crabs, the particular one. No one will ever see it again. They are born, they die, they live, they die. And you say, what's going on? 90% of the time these creatures are invisible. I said today, I watched the Discovery Channel. One of the things I love is when they go down to depths that no one has ever gone before and see these weird life forms, some of them so incredibly awesome and beautiful. And yet, there's nobody there prior to them to see them, Why are they there? And I said that to Father, this priest, because he said, I was just thinking, all creation, everything that exists, the Bible says, is for Christ. And it is a gift to him, including ourselves, from his Father. The Father must really be completely and crazily in love with his Son, because he's just given him too much. He can't stop creating strange, new, different things, just as a gift. And I remember that I knew my father, I was an only son for many years, and my brother came along and ruined it all. And I used to take advantage of my father, who thought, that I was his successor. He had me, he was an older person, I don't think he expected to have a kid. And then I was just so beautiful, and I was thin and blonde. It's just kind of like this, the hair was I was just so incredibly cute. And played it up, And at Christmas time, I could hear him discussing with my mother, I wonder if we got him enough presents. I said, this is a chance. So I would go look around, and he said, say, hey, Daddy. And then he would go out to buy presents. My mother said, can't you see he's doing this to you? Because he wants presents, he already has enough. He's lying. Impossible. I was. She was right, I hated her. Because she could tell that I was lying. But he couldn't. I really manipulated this man till I got stuff that I really didn't even want it or need. I know that if I put the right face on, he would just go out and spend every penny he had. He wasn't a rich man, in buying all kinds of this. And I think that's my father. Can you imagine the eternal Father, the eternal Son, giving him presents? That's the reason why there are dynasties. It's exaggeration in creation. Matter, antimatter, black holes, nobody knows what's there. Creatures, beings of all kinds. It's completely, outrageously out of control. What does it tell you? It tells you that behind all of this is an infinite love gone crazy. So I'm not lying to you. I very seriously tell you, as serious as I can, that I would not find it strange if the only reason there are dinosaurs is to make no one happy.
Next time on the Albacete Show.
La casa editrice Slant Books annuncerà l'uscita della guida agli esercizi di Albacete. Le pagine sono tutte bianche. E poi Lorenzo proverà ancora una volta a conquistare Sant'Antonio, assumendo una banda di mariachi per suonare nel giorno della sua festa. Solo che accidentalmente suonano un inno a Santa Liudina, la santa patrona dei pattinatori sul ghiaccio, e così Sant'Antonio si arrabbierà con Lorenzo più che mai. I qui dell'Albacete Forum saranno sopraffatti mentre cercheranno di archiviare 17.862.443 penne che Lorenzo ha accumulato nel corso della sua vita. Oh, aspetta, ne ho appena trovate altre 2. Quindi in tutto fanno 17.862.445, o forse di più. Tutto questo nella prossima puntata dell'Albacete Show.